The sun had already set, and the village was preparing for nightfall. Inside the market square, traders were packing their goods, tying baskets, and covering stalls. But one woman, Adisa, lingered longer than the rest. Her eyes darted left and right, watching carefully as the oil trader stacked the last calabash of fresh red palm oil behind his stall. Adisa's heart beat faster. She was tired of living in poverty, tired of eating scraps, tired of being mocked by the other women. That palm oil, thick, red, shining in the moonlight, could fetch her respect, money, and perhaps even freedom. She waited until the market grew silent. Then, when no one was watching, Adisa crept to the stall, lifted the heavy calabash, and hurried away into the shadows. When she reached her hut, sweat dripping down her face, she set the calabash down. But as she raised her head, she froze. There, in the old cracked mirror, leaning against her mud wall, her reflection was smiling, even though her lips were not. Adisa stumbled back, her knees trembling as her eyes locked on the mirror. She pressed her lips shut, but in the reflection, her mouth stretched wider, curling into a grin that wasn't hers. No, this is a trick, she whispered, rubbing her eyes. But when she looked again, the reflection leaned closer, whispering words her ears could barely catch. You took what is not yours, and now you belong to me. Adisa screamed and threw a cloth over the mirror, but the voice seeped through, echoing in her hut like the hiss of a snake. Still, she was desperate. She forced herself to ignore it, uncorked the calabash, and dipped her hand into the palm oil. The thick red liquid gleamed under the dim firelight. But when she raised her hand to her lips, the oil dripped not red but black, thick as tar. It burned her tongue before she even tasted it. Outside, a sudden wind blew, rattling the trees, and dogs howled across the village. Adisa dropped the calabash in horror. The mirror cloth slipped off, and there it was again, her reflection. Only this time, the figure in the glass was no longer her. It was someone, or something else. Adisa froze, her breath caught in her throat. The figure in the mirror was taller, darker, its eyes glowing like embers from a dying fire. It grinned with teeth too sharp, too many to belong to any human. Her trembling hand reached for the door, but the reflection raised its hand first, faster than her own, and pressed against the glass. A crack spidered across the surface, but no glass fell. Instead, a deep hum filled the hut, like a drumbeat beneath the earth. Give it back, the reflection growled, its voice layered, like a chorus of spirits. Adisa stumbled back, clutching her chest. I can't. I need it. I'm starving, she cried. The reflection tilted its head, mockingly. Then, to her horror, it stepped out of the mirror, not as flesh, but as a shadow, tall and heavy, spreading across the floor until it wrapped around her ankles like chains. Adisa screamed and tried to run, but her legs were pinned. The calabash rattled on the ground, spinning in place. Suddenly, a knock pounded at her door. Adisa! Open! What's going on in there? It was her neighbor, Efua, her voice sharp with concern. Adisa opened her mouth to cry for help, but no sound came out, only a rasp, as if something was stealing her voice. The shadow laughed. The pounding on the door grew louder. Adisa, open this door now! Afua's voice carried the authority of someone who would not wait much longer. But Adisa could not move. The shadow had coiled around her waist now, heavy like iron chains. Her eyes darted toward the door, desperate, but the reflection-turned shadow leaned close to her ear and whispered, No one will believe you. No one will help you. You are mine. Adisa's body shook. She wanted to scream, to fight, but her voice was still gone. With one final slam, Afua forced the door open and stumbled inside. The moment she crossed the threshold, the room shifted. The candlelight dimmed, the air grew cold, and the smell of palm oil and iron filled the space. Adisa? Afua whispered, her eyes widening. She could see her friend crouched on the floor, trembling, but what froze her was the shadow towering behind her. Its glowing eyes turned slowly toward Afua. Afua gasped, clutching the amulet her grandmother had given her, one said to ward off evil spirits. The shadow hissed at the sight of it, retreating a little, though not letting go of Adisa. The calabash rattled again, this time louder, as if it were alive. Efua! Adisa finally croaked, her voice cracking. Help me. The mirror. Efua turned her head toward the cracked mirror on the wall. Her reflection was normal, but the shadow's was not. In the glass it looked bigger, more monstrous, and she saw clearly what Adisa had not. The shadow wasn't just a spirit. It was Adisa herself, twisted by greed, bound to the stolen palm oil. Efua's heart pounded. She had to act quickly, or Adisa would never escape. Ifua's fingers clutched the amulet so tightly that the beads dug into her skin. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. Child, if you ever meet a spirit born of greed, remember, its strength is not its own. It feeds on the guilt of the one it binds. She took a shaky step forward. Adisa, listen to me, she cried. You must not fear it. It's only as strong as the guilt inside you. But Adisa shook her head violently. Tears streamed down her face. I stole it, Afua. I stole the oil. It is mine. This spirit is mine. Her voice cracked with shame, and as the words left her lips, the shadow's grip tightened, feeding on her confession. The room shook. The calabash on the table rolled to the ground, spilling drops of thick palm oil across the floor. The oil glistened strangely, glowing as though it carried fire within. The shadow bent lower, its voice thundering in both women's ears. She belongs to me. You cannot break what she has chosen. Afua's breath quickened, but she raised the amulet high. The shadow hissed louder, retreating slightly, and in that small moment, she saw her chance. Adisa, look into the mirror, Afua shouted. Not at me, not at the shadow. Look at yourself. See what this spirit has made of you. Adisa, trembling, forced her eyes toward the cracked mirror. Her reflection glared back at her, but it wasn't her. It was the twisted figure of greed, the shadow that held her now. Its mouth curled into a cruel smile, daring her to deny what she had become. Adisa screamed, clutching her chest. For the first time, she realized that the spirit wasn't just holding her. It was her. The room fell into silence, until Afua pressed the amulet against Adisa's skin. The shadow shrieked, and the air seemed to tear apart. The moment the amulet touched Adisa's skin, a piercing scream ripped through the hut, not from Adisa, but from the shadow itself. Its form began to ripple, like smoke fighting against the wind. The ground shook so violently that palm kernels scattered from a woven basket and rolled across the floor. Adisa collapsed to her knees, clutching her head. It's tearing me apart, she cried. Afua tightened her grip on the amulet. Her heart pounded, but her grandmother's voice came again in her mind. Do not let fear guide your hand. Spirits can smell it. She pushed forward, chanting the old words she barely remembered, words of cleansing and truth. Her voice cracked but grew steadier with each line. The shadow howled. It stretched its arms, trying to snatch the amulet from her, but the beads glowed hotter, brighter, until they burned with a golden light. Ifua's hands trembled from the force. Adisa's body convulsed. She screamed, her eyes glowing with both human pain and something otherworldly. Her voice layered with the spirits, two tones fighting for control. Afua fell to her knees beside her friend. Adisa, listen to me. You are stronger than it. This greed is not who you are. Remember your mother's songs, the river you used to play by. Remember yourself. Adisa's breathing slowed for a moment. She blinked, her gaze softening as if she could see the memory Efua painted. A tear slid down her cheek. The shadow, furious, struck out one last time. The mirror cracked wider, a jagged line slicing through the reflection. In that reflection, Efua saw not just Adisa, but dozens of other faces, women and men, villagers of long ago, trapped, bound by greed. The spirit roared, "She is mine, as they were mine before her." Efua, shaking, pulled Adisa into her arms and pressed the amulet against her heart. The hut was filled with blinding light. The shadow's laughter shook the walls, low and cruel. You think a trinket can undo what I am? I was born from her greed. I am her truest face. Adisa collapsed to her knees, clutching her chest. Her breath came in ragged gasps, her eyes darting between Efua, the mirror, and the pool of glowing palm oil spreading across the floor. The spirit bent lower, its smoky hands closing around her shoulders. Efua's voice cut through the noise. Adisa, listen to me. You are more than this greed. You are not the spirit. You are still you. But Adisa shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. I don't know who I am anymore. The mirror suddenly rippled, as though it were water instead of glass. In its depths, Adisa saw two reflections, one of herself, broken and fearful, and one of her grandmother, smiling warmly, holding out her hand. Choose, the spirit snarled. Choose me, and you will never feel hunger or shame again. Reject me, and you will be nothing but a poor, forgotten thief. The room grew colder. The flames in the clay lamp sputtered, threatening to die. Efua's grip tightened on the amulet as she whispered desperately, Adisa, choose wisely. This is your last chance. Adisa lifted her head. Her lips trembled. Her hands shook. She reached toward the mirror, toward the spirit's reflection. And then, at the last second, she turned. She reached for the image of her grandmother instead. The shadow shrieked, a sound so piercing the walls seemed to crack. The mirror shattered, shards scattering across the floor. The pool of palm oil ignited in a sudden blaze of light. The spirit screamed, "No, she is mine." But for the first time, Adisa looked it in the eyes and said firmly, "No, I am mine." The blaze roared, swallowing the shadow whole. When the light faded, the room was still. The spirit was gone. When the blaze died down, silence settled in the small room. The mirror lay in fragments, glittering faintly like stars scattered on the floor. The smell of burnt palm oil lingered, heavy and bitter in the air. Adisa was still on her knees, her body trembling. Her hands clutched at her chest as if trying to hold herself together. Tears streamed freely, soaking her worn dress. I almost chose it," she whispered hoarsely. "I almost let it take me." Afua knelt beside her, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "But you didn't. That is what matters. You saw the truth. You are not your greed. You are still here, still human." Adisa shook her head, staring at the shattered mirror. "But I've done so much wrong. I stole. I lied. I hurt people who trusted me. Even if the spirit is gone, those sins remain. What will the village say? They'll never forgive me." Afua's voice softened, but her words carried strength. "The ancestors spared you tonight. That means they still see hope in you. The village will see it too, but only if you walk the path of honesty from now on." For the first time, Adisa met Afua's gaze. Her eyes, though swollen with tears, held a flicker of determination. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. "Then I will confess. I will tell them everything. Even if they cast me out, at least it will be the truth." Efua helped her to her feet, and together they stepped out into the cool night air. The moon hung above them, full and bright, as though watching silently. The village drums, faint in the distance, still played their steady rhythm. Soon, Adisa would face her people. But for the first time, she did not feel only fear. She felt ready. The next morning, the village square was buzzing with chatter. Word had spread quickly. Adisa, the woman known for her sly ways, had asked to address everyone. The elders sat in a half-circle beneath the great baobab tree, their faces stern and unreadable. Children perched on stones, wide-eyed with curiosity. Women carrying calabashes paused to listen, and men leaned on their hoes, waiting. Adisa walked slowly into the center, her steps heavy but steady. Ifua followed behind her, a quiet pillar of strength. The whispers rose. "There she is, the thief. She stole from the palm grove, didn't she? I heard she cursed herself." Adisa lifted her hands, trembling but determined. Her voice cracked at first but grew stronger with each word. "My people, I have wronged you. I stole palm oil that was not mine. I lied to cover my shame. And last night, I was shown the spirit of my own greed, how it would have destroyed me, and maybe even all of you, if not for the mercy of the ancestors." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some scoffed. Others leaned in, listening intently. She pointed to the scars on her arms, faint burns from the mirror's fire. "These are my proof. I saw what happens when selfishness consumes the soul. I do not want to live that way anymore. I am ready to work, to serve, even if it means starting at the very bottom." For a long moment, silence hung over the square. Then, one of the elders, Elder Kojo, slowly rose. His white beard caught the sunlight, and his voice was deep and measured. "Adisa, truth is like palm wine, bitter when first swallowed, but sweet when it settles in the belly. You have confessed before all. That is a courage greater than many who stand among us. The ancestors spared you not to shame you, but to give you another chance. Will the village do the same?" The crowd murmured, uncertain. Some villagers nodded slowly, while others folded their arms. Then, to everyone's shock, a young boy darted forward. It was Kobe, the little herder whose goat Adisa had once stolen food from. He looked up at her with wide eyes. "If she wants to change, I forgive her." The square fell utterly silent, and just like that, the tide began to turn. The silence that followed little Kobe's words was so heavy, even the birds seemed to pause their songs. A child's forgiveness, pure and untainted, carried more weight than all the murmurs of doubt. Slowly, the people's hardened expressions softened. Mothers glanced at one another, fathers sighed deeply, and the elders exchanged knowing looks. Elder Kojo raised his staff high and struck the ground 3 times. Thump! 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 The sound echoed through the square like a drumbeat of judgment. Let it be known, he declared, that today this woman has confessed her wrongdoing before her people and the ancestors. She has faced herself in truth and chosen the harder path, repentance. Who among us has never stumbled? Who among us has not been saved by mercy? One by one, villagers began to nod. Some clapped lightly. Others muttered blessings under their breath. Then, Afua stepped forward. She placed a calabash of palm oil in Adisa's hands. If you truly wish to change, she said firmly, then let this oil not be stolen but shared. Go and serve the elders tonight at the feast. Let your first act of penance be generosity. Adisa's eyes filled with tears as she accepted the calabash. She bowed low, her pride shattered, her heart humbled. I will serve. From this day, I will serve. That evening, the village gathered for the harvest feast. For the first time in years, Adisa worked tirelessly, passing gourds of palm wine, ladling food for children, washing bowls, and tending to the elders with respect. No one could deny the change in her. As the drums beat and laughter filled the night, a strange calm washed over her. She looked up at the moon, bright and round, and whispered, "Thank you, ancestors. You broke me, so I could be whole again." From that day forward, Adisa became known not as the thief, but as the woman who had faced her own shadow and risen stronger. Parents told her story to children as a warning and a lesson. Greed darkens the eyes, but truth opens the heart. And deep inside, she knew, every time she caught her reflection in water or a polished calabash, that the mirror's fire still lived within her, reminding her never to forget.